Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we're in the paint warehouse at Philadelphia Ship Repair. Battleship New Jersey is still in dry dock, but last week, I think, as of when this video is airing, we were allowed by NAVSEA to go over to the ships in the reserve basin, 3 of them, and strip parts off. And we posted about this. I can't remember if we did a video about it, if it was in an update video or something. But we got a ton of questions about what kind of stuff were we looking for, what sort of stuff did we get, what's the deal with that. So on open houses, or what we like to refer to as strip trips, we are allowed to strip parts off of the ships within certain parameters. Like obviously we can't cut electrical stuff. These ships still have to be safe for the workers that are maintaining them or the ones that are going to scrap them. So like light fixtures, electrical stuff, plumbing things, particularly through-hull openings, are all off the table. We can't use a crane. Everything we get has to be manually carried off of the ships. And so that really limits our ability to take things like radar antennas and stuff off the masts and things like that. They don't let us climb up there. And sometimes there are special requirements. So for example, on John F. Kennedy in 2018, we weren't allowed into the engineering spaces. I don't know if that was related to her engineering plant being classified because it was like a prototype layout for the Nimitz class, or if it was related to the hazardous materials that could have been down there. But you know, there are certain requirements that are specific to the ships. We're allowed to hand carry stuff out as long as it doesn't endanger the ship. What sort of stuff did we get? What was I looking for when we went there? Behind me, you can see 6 pallets of things. This adds up to about 2.5 tons. And if I had to guess, I don't really know what the government was charged for this stuff, but I would say that the value easily exceeds $100,000 of equipment. When New Jersey was held in mothballs in Bremerton, parts were stripped off of her for other ships. So the Navy, NAVSEA, and the contractors here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard Global allow us, usually it's about once a year, to come out and take parts off of the ships here to fill in all those empty spaces. As a curator, I absolutely hate empty brackets on the ship. I want the ship to look like the crew just walked off. I want visitors to feel like they're exploring an active ship and they somehow managed to sneak on board and there's no crew around and they can look around, and that's how they're going to get the best idea of what life was like on board. If all of the original equipment was still there, the things that the crew used to live with, the things that the crew used to work with, the tools, that sort of stuff. And so those are some of the things that I'm most looking forward to. Those are also the things that are easiest to remove from the ship, whether it's while she was in mothballs or visitors collecting souvenirs. Pieces like that go missing all the time. Biscuit wrenches and dogging wrenches and little tools that you can really easily slide in your pocket. So those sorts of things are some of the first things that we grab as we're going through. And if it is the exact right thing, Battleship New Jersey's period of interpretation is 1990. So 1980s and 90s biscuit wrenches, perfect. But if it's not entirely perfect, it's better to have that slot filled, in my opinion. This is definitely debated in the museum ship community and the wider historic house, historic structure preservation community. If I have to take a 2010 biscuit wrench and put it in there until I can get a 1980 biscuit wrench, cool. That's fine with me. Some people hold out for the very best things. I think that best is the enemy of good enough. I'd like to have something there, especially a consumable, something that likely is itself going to be stolen in the next couple of years. So some of the great things that we're able to get along these lines are damage control equipment, dogging wrenches, things like that. So all of these hoses here. Battleship New Jersey's original hoses, gone. Right? Whether they dry rotted out or had been stripped off or sent to another ship when she was decommissioned, they just aren't there. So there are these open brackets all over the place. So whenever we get the chance to grab these, they're a pain to carry out, especially up ladders, but they're absolutely worth grabbing. Some of my other favorite equipment that we're able to get are things that relate to cruise life. come back here and check out this box. So in this pallet over here, we have one of my favorite things that we got from this strip trip. This is a, I don't know what the correct term for it is, but it's a change machine. You would be paid by the paymaster, and you could go over to this machine, put money into it, and get a card that you can use in the pay phones on the ship. I love that we were able to get this and 2 pay phones because, one, it fills in a slot on our ship. It shows something that would have been there that we don't have an example of. These are probably a little too modern for us. The Perry-class frigates that we got to go on, Elrod, Carr, and Kaufman, were built in the 70s to early 80s, and they served up into the 2000s to early 2010s. So some of the equipment on there is definitely too modern. Some of it is firmly in our period of interpretation. And I don't know enough about 1980s telephone card reader machines to say that, oh yeah, this is the right type or not. But it's one we don't have, and it tells a very important story that visitors nowadays have trouble relating to. Like, you've got a cell phone. You don't need a pay phone to call home, but communication between the ship and back home was extremely difficult, and the Navy was doing everything they could to make it happen, including installing machines like this. So it's going to be really cool. This will probably be a couple months after we get back from dry dock. It's certainly not something that's going to happen in the near term. But as we're able to get this equipment set up and show how these folks communicated back home before they could just shoot an email or call from their own personal cell phone, they had to line up at a card reader like this, pay money to get a phone card so that they could then line up at the phone and call home for a brief period of time. I really like that we're able to interpret this. We were also able to get a lot of other living type equipment. So we got a lot of the cork boards that, for whatever reason, are missing from around the ship, where there would have been bulletins and daily stuff posted. We also got a lot of mirrors. For whatever reason, a lot of our mirrors are either gone or they've started to delaminate to the point that they don't work anymore. So this is going to allow us to restore some of the heads on the ship to look the way they would have. The bathrooms, it's going to allow us to put them in the berthing compartments where they're missing, where there's just like 4 holes on the wall where there used to be one of these mounted, but for whatever reason it's gone now. Another important thing that we were able to get was a lot of galley equipment. And actually, while I'm over here, this black thing down here was mounted with a payphone. It's a phone book holder. There's another piece of cruise life on board in the 80s and 90s that we don't think about anymore, because I have all the phone numbers I need right here. And if not, I can Google what I need on here. But like a phone book that tells you where you can order pizza from in Long Beach when the ship is in town for in her home port, like that is an incredible find. And now I have to find a 1980s Long Beach phone book to go in there. We've got some of the original printed on the ship phone books that talk about which bars sailors are allowed to go to in their home port, things like that. We've got some of those, so we'll either copy one or put a duplicate, one that we've got several of, out, along with a phone book, along with the new payphones we've got. And we're now able to tell a story that otherwise you won't think about. But we may or may not even put a sign with this, because while this phone may be different than what you're used to, it has a cord. You're tethered to the wall while you use it. You at least can recognize it as a telephone and figure out what it must have been for. It's different from the other phones on the ship that are obviously for communicating throughout the compartment, or throughout the ship. Sorry, went off on a tangent there. Galley equipment. We were able to get a ton of galley equipment. One of my greatest regrets was in 2018 when we were allowed to take parts off Kennedy. There was a like deli meat slicer in the galley, and I didn't take it. It was too heavy for me to carry by myself, and I'd only been in the job for 6 or 9 months at that time. I didn't know if we would have had one, if it was too new. But since then, Over the last 5 years, I've never seen another one, and I have found out that the Battleship would have likely had at least one, probably more than one. There are mounting points in the Chief's Galley where there would have been one. If there was one in the Chief's Galley, there was probably one in the Officer's Galley, one in the Butcher Shop, maybe even one in the Enlisted Mess, or the Enlisted Galley. So not only did I miss the chance to get the only one that I'd ever seen, I needed more than one. We were able to find two between the 3 pairings we went on this week, and we grabbed them both, even though they are ungodly heavy. We were also able to get a bread slicer. We have a real old one, but I'm not sure if it was accurate to, if it's original to New Jersey, if it's one we got from a previous strip trip. So now we've got a much more modern one as well. Maybe one for the bakery and one for the bread cooling room, or 2 for bread cooling. We got a bunch of pans for the breads to cool on. The bread cooling room had previously been like a storage closet, and we were able to reclaim it as part of the exhibit space as we were restoring the bakery. But it's a relatively empty room. It really just has shelves and that really old bread slicer in it. We were, so being able to find bakery-related things on these Perry-class frigates is going to go a long way towards interpreting that space. And that's another philosophy I have as a curator that is definitely not agreed on in the rest of the world. As we're restoring stuff, I would rather throw open the door to an empty space and fill it in later than perfectly restore the space. Because if it's one of 100 spaces that I want to restore, I'm never going to get to it. I'll be at a different museum before it's ever done. And the guy after me might not have that on his priority list. But if I throw the door open and 50,000 visitors walk past this door and see an empty room, one of them's going to come up to me and tell me, hey, I've got this bread slicer, or hey, my grandfather served in there and I'm going to donate some money so you can help work on it. Or I'm going to be embarrassed every time I walk past the room. And so when I see something like that, even though it's ungodly heavy, I'm going to grab it so that I can work on continuing the restoration of that space. So we were able to get things like this that would dispense slices of bread, toasters, the bread slicer, like I said, the deli meat slicer. Man, if we didn't have a line in our contract about not being able to operate the galley on the ship, we could open an entire deli on board with the equipment that we were able to get off of these ships. So these strip trips are incredibly valuable, not just to us. A number of other museum ships came out. Iowa was there. Buffalo, I think, had the biggest haul of anything. Shane's going to have his work cut out for him over the next couple of months, getting all that stuff reinstalled on board. The folks from Battleship Cove came, and they took an entire berthing compartment's worth of lockers and other fittings. The folks across the river from us at Independence Seaport Museum were there. USS Cod came in from Cleveland to get some stuff. They were being charged $900 a piece for sound-powered phone handsets, and they were able to get twice as many as they needed off of these ships. And I'm sure I'm mentioning some people, and I apologize for that, certainly not because they weren't memorable or because they didn't get some good stuff. But we had a really great haul and are really thankful for the opportunity to participate in this. There's been a lot of concern in the community that since the Navy operates fewer ships and significantly smaller mothball fleets, and since there are so few World War II ships, or even 50s and 60s era ships with a lot of World War II parts on them, if these opportunities are no longer valuable for museum ships, or that they're going to go away entirely because there just aren't any ships for us to take parts off of anymore. And I don't believe that's true. We got, like I said, 2.5 tons of equipment, valued definitely in the 6 figures out of this trip. So we really appreciate that NAVSEA, the Navy, and Global, the contractors over there, worked with us and allowed us to get this equipment. What's something related to sailor's life that you think is important for us to interpret, that you think it's important for us to get the parts to put out on the ship so that people can understand what it's like living on a ship, being away from your family? Let us know in the comment section down below what sort of stuff it is. Is it something like a payphone, or are there other sorts of things that you think we should have out on the tour route to interpret life aboard the vessel? Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support us being able to now mount and install all this equipment on the ship. You can also support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum and the channel. Thanks for watching.